Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome, Guy, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thanks, great to be here.
It's great to have you on the podcast. Really interested to have sort of two wide-ranging conversations, although I think they'll interreact during the course of this podcast, Guy. One is about your experience in marketing and the creative sectors and how share some of that knowledge for the benefit of our listeners, but also got a really successful business, Pooch and Mutt. So actually, want to hear a bit about your own entrepreneurial story and journey. So perhaps we should start there. So 2007, 2008 came out of the kind of creative marketing consultancy sectors, as I understand it, and formed Pooch and Mutt. Tell our listeners a bit about that and how did that come about?
It wasn't quite as clear cut as we could make it sound. I could admit,
life never is it?
No, and there's ways of polishing it. There's like the official version, and I've moved slightly away from the official version towards the truth, which is always nice. But a few things happened around the same time, around 2007. I was running a creative department of a media agency. They were looking to sell the media agency, so they basically kind of made me redundant, but kind of said you can take your clients with you and we'll still work together, but you don't want to be part of the package we're trying to sell for a variety of reasons. So I did that. At the same time, I read a piece about the founder of Red Bull. And saying basically he was a marketer. He knew that he could sell a product. He just needed to find the right product to sell, and then he'd be able to build it. And I was very arrogant and thought, I'm a marketer and I can just sell a product. That's all you need. And equally that a lot of my clients were doing quite well on the back of work that I was doing, and I wasn't doing that well out of the back of it. So that happened. And at the same time, my mum and dad's dog, Cookie, got diagnosed with hip dysplasia.
Okay.
And my mum has a company that makes health supplements for horses. We treated Cookie with the horse joint supplement, and it worked brilliantly.
Wow.
And the vet was very happy. And then so that all kind of came together, and I was like, well, I could probably do this and sell this as a product, so build it as a product. And at the same time, it was kind of the start of the online advertising thing.
Yeah.
Really. And I was making TV ads for people and stuff. And I thought, well, if I can prove with a product that I can build online sales and do online marketing for a product, then I can offer that as a service to other people through marketing consultancy. So there were all these little things coming together. Yeah. So it was what people would now call a side hustle.
Okay.
But that didn't exist at the time. But that's what it was. And then it just grew beyond that. The first... And like say Black Friday week this year, we turned over more than our annual turnover for my first 5 years.
Spectacular.
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't know what the annual turnover was for the first 5 years, but yeah,
I'm assuming
it is. But it was tiny for the first 5 years, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and it was very much a side project.
And it was a side hustle. You were still doing your consultancy and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, and I remember, but even at that stage, I was going in and I was chatting to kind of corporate finance people and investment people, and I was trying to understand that market and how it worked.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like a grown up in the room, even though I wasn't, and saying, well, I'm also doing other stuff on the side. And a guy looked at me dead straight and he's like, well, you couldn't afford to buy a shirt if you weren't, so...
Yeah.
I'm like,
Straight right. Talking.
Yeah.
So what made you get serious about the product, about Pooch and Mutt?
I did. I applied for a government program, which was very good, called the Growth Accelerator Program.
Okay.
I don't know if it ever really exists, if it still exists. And had a very good coach. And for the first time, and this sounds crazy now because it's something I massively preach to other people, but the first time he sat down and said, you know, where do you want to be in 5 years? And we painted a picture using a tool called an orbit template, which I recommend to lots of people. Just Google orbit template and hopefully you'll find it. We painted a picture of kind of what the company could look like in 5 years, and then worked backwards from there.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd done that and kind of built a plan. And now I tell people there's a Seneca quote, which is, if you don't know to which port you're sailing, no wind is favourable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of something I live by now, but I had no idea about at the time. So that was one of the key turning points, was actually like, making a plan. And once you make a plan, and you just have to deliver it. It's that simple.
But orbit templates and orbit planning is so strong, is it? We do it within Inspire because we set this 3-year plan and just work back.
Yeah,
what
and
does
it's
it mean?
so
If you want to be
simple.
there, how do you get there? What are the steps? And
It's so simple. And I do a lot of some mentoring and advising at the moment, and I was chatting to a friend of mine last night who's got a business that's doing quite well, or has the potential to do quite well. And the idea to a lot of people of like, looking to a point in the future and making a plan to get there, a lot of people don't think about it.
No.
I've done a talk, so I also, weirdly, around the same time, I got into kind of fitness marathon training. And I've done a talk about it where I say, look, nobody gets up in the morning and runs a marathon and thinks about running a marathon. You don't do that. You say, I'm going to run a marathon in April next year. So you have a date of April next year. You have a target of 26.2 miles. And then you just work backwards from that. And it's like, right, if I can run 10K by October, if I can run 15K by December, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you end up beating your target, or at least meeting your target. It's all about breaking it down like that.
Yeah.
And people just don't think to apply that to a business.
No. We just plough on regardless at times with no focus and no targets or...
Exactly.
Or what are the stepping stones?
And one of the things that I think I've been quite good at compared to other people, and this might be just because I like doing it, but it's that working on your business, not in your business. And I have some really great people that work for me, and like the day-to-day all runs very, very well without me. And my job is to kind of work on it of where it can be.
And was that a conscious decision from day one, or is it something you've enabled the business to get to that point to enable you to be that person?
There's a bit of both.
Okay.
There's a bit... No one would start a business like I started a business now, because, especially in a product business, you would go to Kickstarter, and once you've gone to Kickstarter, you go to Seeders, and once you've gone to Seeders, you go to a VC, and like there is a route to fund and a route to growth. And I do mentoring at Imperial College, and everyone is talking in like Series A, Series B, like that. That's not a language I had when I started, and that roadmap wasn't there when I started. No one would do 5 years now and run out your EIS time without knowing it. In a product business. So it definitely wasn't kind of the goal to do it like that. And also I spent 5 years doing every job. I did our monthly accounts in a really bad spreadsheet. Didn't really work. I put code on our website to enable us to do e-com sales. I was going to the post office with an IKEA bag full of our online.
So it didn't start in that way.
So I kind of, but by doing, I don't think I'm great at anything, but I think I'm quite good at lots of little things.
Okay.
So everyone that works for me is kind of better at their job than I could be, but I have enough understanding of everybody else's job to be able to work with them and kind of set the vision.
And do you think that was important, because clearly you'd come from a services background, and then you're in a product business, and I'll ask you about the differentials in a minute, but do you think you needed to learn to do every job because you hadn't had that from your background?
I wasn't very good at a services job, just to be clear.
That's an honest response, isn't it?
I was in I was in advertising and marketing as a frustrated creative, effectively.
Okay.
There's a concept I read about the other day called shadow jobs, where it's like a movie director who ends up being an agent because they don't want to be a director, or they don't. I didn't do the path to be a creative. I would have been a much better advertising creative. I was a terrible account handler, effectively, which is a whole other story. Which is why I ended up kind of pushing into lots of creative avenues and kind of getting out of what my job role should have been, effectively.
Right. So do you wish you'd found product earlier in your career?
Yeah, I mean, at the start, it was kind of having a product was my own kind of way of being able to do my own marketing for myself.
Well,
and I'm kind of good
at that. And I was going to ask you that as well,
yeah.
I suppose. Was it the product that was important day one, or was it creating the brand?
I was definitely creating the brand.
Okay.
It was definitely creating the brand. But a brand that does something and a brand that's helpful.
Yeah.
It's not like I was launching a cigarette brand or a junk food brand or something like that. So it had to be something that would be called purpose now, but wasn't then. So it had to be something that did good in whatever you define as good. But it wasn't. It's not like I'm a dog crazy person who wanted to do a dog business. And equally now, as much as obviously there is a bit about we are making brilliant dog food and dog treats and dog supplements that makes a real difference and genuinely makes a real difference in dogs' lives, and we get amazing reviews about how much we do make a difference. But that's still only part of it. There is a big part of it which is about growing the team and enabling the team, which is really important to me, and even to the point where we've got at the moment, a lot of our team have kind of been offered jobs elsewhere, and I'm kind of proud that they have. It's annoying to have to recruit, but it's proud that people are coming in and really developing their careers and
giving them that opportunity, and they're flourished as individuals. And so
that's really important to me. And also it's kind of the mental challenge of kind of running and building a business. Like, I'm really good at kind of growth opportunities. I'm terrible at day to day.
Okay.
My management team joke with me because this is from, if everyone knows about Belbin, but it's about my Belbin kind of profile says this. I'm brilliant at starting things. I have loads of great ideas. I'm terrible at finishing them. Right. So I've got a great team that kind of wrestles projects off me to make sure they actually get done.
So I've got two things come out of that. One is a conversation around purpose, so I'll make sure we have that in a moment. But for somebody, and it's kind of that entrepreneurial, that founder spirit, that business owner that, typically we all like shiny new things. How do you stop yourself chasing the shiny new thing, the shiny new business, the shiny new opportunity, and focus on the one business? Because you seem to have done that really well. You might tell a different story, but from the face of it, that seems a strong proposition for you.
A couple of things on that. One, an author I don't particularly like called Gino Wickman has a book called Rocket Fuel. And that is about basically, if you are, I was called a monkey, which is chasing shiny new things. If you are that person, you need a good number two or a good team around you to kind of tell you when to get back in your box and challenge you, but also take the good ideas and make them happen. So that's important. I mean, I also went through a phase where I did quite detailed business plans on a men's kind of face care brand. I did one on a gym. I did another D2C project.
Okay.
And actually, what I learned about myself through that process is I then took all my learnings of my planning, and it might be called, to many people, it's called zero cost budgeting, which is it's just a way of starting. What would I do a business if I started from scratch now? And you just take a totally different sector and you make a plan, but then you can take the learnings from that plan and put it into your existing business. So I do quite a bit of that because I do chase shiny new things and I do get excited by shiny new things. I also do the mentoring that I'm doing, especially with the guys, say, at Imperial, where they are kind of 22, 24-year-olds, and it's very early on their journey. So being able to help them kind of scratches that itch for me quite a bit. And also we bought in a great non-exec, pseudo non-exec, who is kind of very focused, and him and my commercial director are very good at kind of looking at the budget, what we can afford, what we should be doing, what's working well. His thing is, find out what you do well and do more of it.
Yeah.
So they kind of keep me in line, effectively.
At times a challenge, possibly, but they do keep you in line. Hey?
Yeah, and that's one of the problems actually we've had, which has been quite interesting, is I'm very much always after new things and new shiny things and just wanting to push growth.
Yeah.
We went through a phase with kind of like commercial director and pseudo non-exec where the focus was much more about profitability, and it needed to be at that point, and we needed to kind of batten down the hatches and focus on the things we were doing well. And there was a little bit where I noticed like we were doing the right things but the magic was going, and then I kind of had to consciously kind of put the magic back, and it is a fine balance. It is kind of a seesaw, isn't there? There's a balancing point between you can cost control to the nth degree, you can focus on that consolidation and all of that kind of thing, but if it takes the fun out of it and you lose the kind of essence of what the brand's all about, then actually you can lose everything. You need both.
But there is this kind of...
And we went through a phase, and that was when we kind of were looking for funding. And once we sorted funding out, and we have a partner who is looking at growth, they look at growth. We're very aligned. We've got an investor who is our manufacturer, and they look at things in terms of tons of dog food sold, and because they're making the food and they've got a margin, because we're selling it and we've got a margin, actually, even if we're not profitable, we're kind of profitable as a group. So it works. And that's one of the things that I kind of warn a lot of other people about, is when who you take your money from, and do you want to work with them, and are you aligned? And luckily we've got really good alignment, but I know a lot of people that don't.
That's trip hazard, isn't it? It's at that point when you take funding in and you're pursuing and you need the money and you make the wrong choice.
And loads of people get surprised. People are like, oh, well, our PE wants us to do this. So it's like, well, their job's to make money. Their job is to sell their shares for more than they bought them from.
They've got a
3 to 5 year
They've
timeline.
got a plan. They're working back their 5-year plan, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's you then go on to, you are on someone else's schedule, and that's fine if you've. I think nowadays you've got a lot of people who understand that journey of whether it's crowdfunding up through VC up to PE and they all want to IPO, but if you understand that journey and you build a business for that journey and kind of for that kind of cookie cutter approach, which is not that difficult to do, to be honest, but you've just got to know who wants what metrics at what point, and you build it around that. Whereas if you've built a business organically and then you're kind of trying to squash it into that, it's a lot harder.
Yeah. So obviously, by the sounds of it, you've successfully fundraised. You've got good funding partners on board. 2 or 3 hints and tips to anybody listening looking for funding right now? What would you do?
The number one thing for funding, and which everyone gets really shocked at when I tell them, and it's not that shocking, is, and because we're in an accountancy office, this makes a lot of sense, but you've got to understand cash flow.
Yeah.
And I went to a business growth program at Cranfield Business School, which I highly recommend to people. It's for businesses doing kind of 2 to 20 million. Their selling point is you can get so far on kind of nous and intelligence, we'll tell you how to do it properly, which is a great bit of positioning. But based on one of their cash flow lectures, I was like, oh God, I can't believe everybody knows this. And I just restructured the whole business based effectively on that one lecture.
Okay.
And you can fund your business through cash flow. Extended, we put in, moved accountancy so we could do invoice financing. Yeah. We moved our manufacturer to the one that didn't necessarily offer us the best prices, but that offered us the best payment terms. Yeah. And a lot of people who are looking to fund should go to their manufacturer and say, I'll give you 5% of my business if you give me 6-month payment terms.
Yeah.
And that will fund your business for far, far, far longer than selling 5% for $100,000.
Yeah. And it's about understanding that working capital cycle, isn't it? Where does my cash get tied up?
Yeah.
And how can I release some of that cash.
Yeah, and it all depends on your model as well. I mean, it all depends on the model you're going for. Equally, there's a few in our sector who are looking at that VC model. There's 3 dog food companies who between them are losing 30 million a year.
30 million,
which is just taking value out of the market for everyone else. I mean, they're literally giving stuff away.
The market for you.
Yeah, and everybody, I talk to all these city people. They're like, "Oh, aren't these companies doing great? They've gone, they've gone from 12 to 20 million in a year," and it's like, yeah, they've lost 20 doing it. It's not that hard.
They're losing £2 for every pound of sales they grow. Yeah,
but actually, those companies tend to be people with a finance background who understand finance, who understand how it works. The products are relevant to them, and they just understand how it works. So you can raise money. So I think that is my first bit of advice is look at cash flow. Second bit of advice, if you want to go down that route, work out what journey you're going to take.
Yeah.
Are you the fast growth, massive loss making, need loads of cash company? Yeah. Are you kind of a profitable, slow growth company? Do you want money out for you? Are you happy to kind of wait 10 years and struggle with VCs and be bossed around by a load of people on other people's agendas, but you'll get more money in the long run, potentially, with the risk there? So those are the 2 things that I think you need to look at first.
Definitely. Could we have a little bit of a conversation about purpose? Because it was interesting you mentioned that earlier, and I know you've got some strong opinions on purpose, and I suppose particularly with your marketing head on, because do you think that kind of word purpose is being a bit saturated at the moment? Everybody says they've got a business with purpose.
Yes, I think it's been massively saturated, and I don't watch TV advertising very much, but everyone's doing it at the moment, and it's just a bit boring.
Yeah.
I think the article I wrote said that all these studies came out and said that companies with purpose are overperforming or outperforming companies without purpose. But maybe they were at the time of the studies, but if everyone jumps on that bandwagon and everybody has a purpose, then they don't outperform because everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
And I also think that customers are smarter than people think they are, than a lot of companies. And, I used a couple of examples, and this is more about people who are just doing purpose badly and jumping on the purpose bandwagon.
I think you called it purpose washing.
I did call it purpose washing. I want to get purpose.
Now purpose washing.
And it's exactly what it is. You look at Philip Morris have got the purpose of having a smoke-free world. I could go to Philip Morris in a day and work out to have them a smoke-free world. You just turn the machines off. Done. It's easy. They don't believe that purpose. And equally, like Coca-Cola have got some, planet-inspired, trying to be green purpose, but they're the number 1 plastic polluter in the world. If they believed it, they could do something about it. And also, the Coca-Cola example is interesting because if they had the balls, they could set a very clear goal. They could have a very clear, you will never find a Coke bottle on a beach within 5 years from now. They could do that, and they could make that happen, and they could align the whole of their company to that, and it would work. If they had the balls to do it, it would work, and it would make a difference. But they don't have the balls to do it because they don't care that much, and they just want to sell sugary water. And people see through it, and you saw, again, there was a great bit in the summer at Cristiano Ronaldo's press conference when he's like pushing the Coke bottles off the table.
Yeah.
And if they had a real purpose that they believed, he wouldn't be doing that because he could get behind it. So I think there's just a lot of bullshit out there, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I think you can really care. Like if Coke really cared, they could really do something, but they don't. And there's a lot of this kind of purpose washing. And I don't really think that most companies should kind of go to a purpose consultant and find out what their purpose is. It should be there at the start.
It should be in the DNA, isn't it? Particularly in an entrepreneurial owner-managed business.
Exactly.
It's like, why do it otherwise?
Yeah, and there is a point at which a company outgrows a founder, and you need potentially to bring in an agency to clarify exactly what that founder meant when he was talking or she was talking about a purpose. But I've never had to say, that we kind of believe in equal opportunities employment.
Yeah.
I remember I was in a this business group I was in, and everyone was talking about their anti-slavery policies, and I was like, has everyone got an anti-slavery policy? And they're like, yeah, you've got to have an anti-slavery policy. I was like, but why? That would never even occur to me that that would be needed. It's so obviously something we would never do. And we've always had environment at heart. Our first ever packaging was biodegradable packaging, which actually isn't the best for the environment, I since found out. But that goes into the greenwashing argument. But yeah, I think we wanted to do something right from the start. Yeah. And yes, you need to formalise that at some point. But, putting stupid purposes like a smoke-free world onto Philip Morris is just ridiculous. Yeah. I don't believe every company needs a purpose. Yeah. Or that. Actually, that's not true. I believe every company needs a purpose. I don't believe that every purpose needs to be a grand kind of saving the world purpose. No. Your purpose could be to just make really good coffee, and that's your purpose. And you can obviously go on top of that and go, well, that coffee's gonna liven people up, and they're going to enable them to lead their best lives. But you don't need to. Some
of the best businesses that probably do have purpose or do business the right way possibly didn't start that way.
Yeah.
They started because they made great coffee, and then they're making great coffee, and they think, well, actually, how can we have a better effect on the planet, on the world, on our clients, on our customers? Now we're making great coffee, we can do those things.
Exactly. And there's in the article I wrote, I put the example of micro scooters.
Okay.
Mainly because I have to buy them for my daughter. But they don't really talk, there's a load of purpose that they could talk about, kind of about getting kids active. They also have a scooter made out of kind of ocean retrieved plastic, which is really good. But they don't shout about it. They're not like, this is our purpose. You can kind of just tell looking at them that they just want to do the right thing.
Yeah, do business the right way.
Do the business the right way. And I think that's the way things are going, that people just want to do things the right way. And you don't need, if you're doing things the right way, your customers will find out. You don't need to shout about it and ram it down their throats. And everyone is ramming it down their throats, so it doesn't really make a difference if you do.
Stand out from the crowd, no. I suppose if we're on that kind of branding, kind of marketing kind of piece, again, obviously with all that expertise that you've had, what lessons perhaps have you learned working with some major brands, MTV, Mini, and others, about what good marketing is?
Big brands don't really know what good marketing is. It's interesting because it makes you realise your point of difference as a small brand.
Okay.
And especially kind of when I did a strategy piece about Pooch and Mutt, there's a bit in Malcolm Gladwell's book when he talks about David and Goliath. And I've shown this loads of people who work for me. No one knew who David and Goliath was, which was shocking enough. But Malcolm Gladwell looked at David and Goliath's story, and he said, actually, if you look at what people were doing with a sling in those days, they could take a bird in flight out of the sky. They were incredibly accurate with slings. And they've done reports on kind of sling rocks and sling bullets, and they're kind of the equivalent of a small caliber gun. So everyone thinks as David as the underdog against the giant Goliath, but the reality is that David took a gun to a sword fight and won.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of the real story of being a small brand against big brands.
Yeah,
we have the power. We're nimble. We have the power. I mean, Pooch and Mutt is now, I think, the biggest. Hope when I say this, but one of the biggest, if not the biggest, pet food brands on Instagram. And that's where customers are.
Yeah.
Customers aren't watching TV and watching TV ads and reading newspapers. They're on Instagram. And big companies have no idea how to use it. And, we've been doing it for 10 years or whatever, but they just, even 10 years on, they don't know how to use it. And as things grow and develop, the big brands just don't know what to do, which is why they buy smaller brands.
Yeah.
Effectively, who do know what to do. And then they tend to destroy them.
Time and time again.
Yeah.
I suppose so. If you're a small business, be it services or product, and you want to make the most of your marketing spend, then is one of the tips that you've just already mentioned, being nimble.
Yeah.
Use the fact that you're small and you're agile.
Yeah.
What other tips would you have?
Measure.
Okay.
Because we now live in, and I've had a big, keep having arguments with a guy called Professor Byron Sharp, who wrote a book called How Brands Grow. I keep having arguments with him on Twitter, which I quite enjoy.
You've obviously got different viewpoints.
We have very different viewpoints. But he is, his book is a very, very good book if you work at a big brand in the 90s.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, people don't work at big brands in the 90s.
Yeah.
And, we live in a world where you can measure everything. You can measure all of your data. And actually, when you have such small budgets, as small companies do, you should be measuring everything you do, and you should be measuring and optimizing everything you do. And it's easy to do it. I mean, it's incredibly easy to do it compared to how it used to be. The flip side of that is all the big brands, there is a certain point of scale, and you actually see it in some fast growth companies as well, that they do everything kind of right as a small company, and they measure everything, and they get everything right, they get to ROI, but you get to a certain scale and equally a certain funding level. So you get all these companies, and they're given 60 million, and they've got to spend 60 million to grow over 3 years. When you get to that stage, you have to spend it really quickly, and that's when you go on TV and buses and do all the vanity marketing, which you can't measure. And it's hard, people underestimate when they're looking at funding. It's quite hard to spend that much money. It's especially hard to spend that much money well.
Purposefully, yeah.
Yeah. So having little can be a bonus.
Yeah.
Because the less you have, the more you have to just make it work, and you have to kind of rinse every penny, and you really care about it. I've literally fought for the pennies, because we've had to.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn to make things work.
But a lot of businesses start with somebody with a great idea, a passion for what they do. They possibly haven't come from a sales and marketing background.
Lucky them, I would say, because I came into it thinking, marketing is everything.
Yeah.
More accountants should set up businesses. Like, accountancy is what drives everything. It's the numbers which help you understand what's happening in your business. And I had to spend years learning that to be able to effectively read what's going on. So if you can understand accountancy and cash flow and how everything's working, what products are profitable, you're going to have probably a much stronger foundation for your business. Equally, I massively underestimated operations. It's great to have a great idea and a great product, and you think people could sell it. But I remember when we first started to grow, we got quite famous, and we won these design awards for having dog treats in colourful tubes. And I scraped the money together for the first order of empty tubes. And our packer who was doing it called me up, and I knew him quite well. He was like, we've just had 3 trucks of empty tubes delivered. I was like, no. It's like, we've not got anywhere to put them. And I was like, oh, I can see, that would be a bit of a problem. And it never occurred to me. It never occurred to me to look at the operational side of things, of like how we'd store them, where we'd store them, how you rotate shelf lives, how you look at different products, looking at the tail of your products, looking at, the full costings of where you're manufacturing, distributing, moving things around. And accountancy and operations is what, that's the engine.
Yeah.
There's the shiny outside, but you need a good engine.
Okay. And do you believe you can hire in the expertise and consultants for the shiny outside, the marketing bit?
You can hire in expertise for anything. One of the things I say to people is to be very clear on what you want that expertise to be and to do. Someone I'm working with was saying that she wanted to hire in a marketing agency. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to do, but there's a stage I like to look at, which is kind of like your mission, vision, and then you go down to strategies, objectives, tactics. And flow through like that,
Yeah.
and it's a good way of looking at it. And I think one of the problems is that everyone hires in tactics,
Yeah.
without setting objectives,
Yeah.
and objectives matching the overall strategy.
Yeah.
And that's just the wrong way around. So, when I was talking to her, I was like, yes, you may need to hire someone in, but let's kind of work out what you want to achieve first, what the goal is. And actually, once you do that, it's like, I need to hire someone to manage influencer outreach on Instagram, for example, is where you could get to, not just go to a marketing agency and say help, I need marketing. So I think, you can bring in, you can outsource, or you can insource, or you can hire whatever expertise you need, but you just need to know, you need to do the work, which is the kind of working on your business, not in your business. You just need to do the work to work out exactly what that is. Otherwise, you just throw your money away.
So this is quite a mature conversation, and it's one where you've clearly gone through the journey to get there. How different is the guy in front of me today to the guy that set up the business in 2008?
I mean, not even comparable. I'm less arrogant. I might not sound it now. I'm less arrogant, definitely. I'm more knowledgeable.
And that's investment in yourself, self-development, doing the Cranfield course, all
Yeah,
of those
I've
things.
done.
What's really made you change? As an
So,
individual?
like I say, I worked with Growth Accelerator course to start off with, which was a big investment of my time and the government's money, which was nice. I did Cranfield, which was a big investment of my time and my money, or Pooch and Mutt's money.
Yeah.
I've done a course at the London Stock Exchange, which was an even bigger investment of money and time, and that's more around the funding piece as well. I mean, those are the kind of the bigger investments. I have read many books, listened to many books, listened to many podcasts, talked to many people. I am what I've now found out is called an autodidact, which is, I'm not particularly good at school. I'm not particularly good at being taught stuff, but I'm very good at learning stuff on my own. And also learning in the area and identifying the areas where I've needed to learn. And that's not just on the business, that's kind of in personal growth as well, in mental fitness, physical fitness. I apply that to the team. It's really important to me to have kind of healthy people in the business, as in mentally and physically healthy. I don't want people pushed to exhaustion. I want people to be happy. When we did have an office, which we've now ditched, everyone's going to the gym together at lunchtime, walking to, going out for walks together, going out for runs together, people having lunch together. It's not about just kind of making everybody work stupidly hard. It's the same for me, working out, what's important to me in life. I believe that nobody on their deathbed ever goes, oh, I wish I'd worked harder on that PowerPoint presentation. I wish I'd spent more time at work. They do think, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids. And I've said this in a few articles and publicly, I'm very proud of what I've achieved with Pooch and Mutt, what I've achieved for myself, but I'm equally proud that I've done that. I've done 95% of my kids' bath times.
Wow.
I am home to be, working at home now, but I've been at home with them every evening. I see them every day. I spend the weekends with them. I've equally, managed to fit in 2 marathons and a half Ironman. Last week I deadlifted 200 kilos, which I was very proud of. So it's building in a lot of stuff, which isn't just work.
Yeah.
And that for me is more important.
Because that's a really, it's a great philosophy, isn't it? And I think that particularly with having it for your team, because there's a lot of business owners that think about, well, I need that balance, if such a thing exists. But, that balance for myself, but actually are quite selfish about it and don't think about the need for their team. And it's when you start to think about wider for the team and what does that mean for their well-being, that you can see exponential.
Yeah, and you can, and it's not easy. I mean, also, I don't think we've got that right.
Yeah.
I've hired some really good people who, some of whom have pushed themselves too hard, and I'm trying to, rein them back, which is a weird position to be in.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want people exhausting themselves because it's very short-termist anyway. It just leads to kind of resentment and more recruitment anyway. But equally, I want people to kind of flourish in their lives.
Yeah.
There's a good thing Tim Ferriss says where he's like, you need 3 things in your life. One of them can be work, one can be family, one can be exercise, one can be anything. But if you have 3 things in your life, when one goes badly, one might go well.
Yeah.
So you can do a 200 kg deadlift and something goes really wrong at work, but at least you can be happy at one while you're really annoyed about the other.
There's something with a smile on your face. Yeah. And so you obviously really believe that balance does exist and it's not a myth. And do you look for balance in a traditional way? And I'll explain that because I think as a business owner entrepreneur, it's quite difficult because we don't lead that Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 life all the time. But we have those opportunities to be present, to do stuff, to be around our kids, but what we're really bad at, in my opinion, is trying to be present in the moment. We're often distracted with what the business is all about. But you seem to have quite a passionate view that you can have that as a business owner, that 9 to 5 work-life balance.
You absolutely can. I didn't for a long time, I will say, and we've been more successful since I have had it.
Yeah.
I normally wear this bracelet with a skull on it, and it's to remind you about being dead. It's the Stoic concept of memento mori and thinking of your death. But there's a thing of like, if you think about your death, or there's another thing in Stoic philosophy where you think about your children's death, which people think is a bit weird to talk about. But if you think about your children's death, when you're trying to read a newspaper, or you're scrolling through Instagram on your phone and your kid's doing something where they want your attention and you're like, I want to scroll on Instagram. Well, imagine if you woke up the next morning and your kid had died in their sleep. Not only would you obviously feel bad about your kid dying in their sleep, but you'd feel worse because the time that you hadn't been present, you were on your phone looking at Instagram when they wanted to play with you. But if you think about that happening, and then you give that time to your kids when you're with them and you're present when you're with them, then you will have nothing, you'll feel bad about it, but you won't necessarily feel guilty about it if something happens. I think that's important. I also think that one of the things I would like in life, which, as well as kind of creating the word purpose washing, I would like people to talk about life-work balance and not work-life balance. Yeah. Because it is the wrong way round. Yeah. There's a lot of people that don't have work-life balance, but the question is, what are you doing it for? And there's a lot of people out there and they want to do, I'm speaking as a parent now, but it doesn't have to be as a parent, but a lot of people say things like, I want to do the best for my kids. I want them to go to this school and turn up in this car and take them on this holiday and whatever. Fine, but at what cost? Would the best, not for them, maybe not having a ridiculously expensive ski holiday, but maybe you go camping together and spend time together and it's a tenth of the cost, but you're more present with your kids and you can enjoy it. So there's a bit of kind of what's it all for anyway. And then there's the concept of the hedonic treadmill, which I don't know if you're familiar with. No. Whatever you get, you always want more. It's as simple as that.
It's like sense of desire, greed.
Yeah, if you're a car person and you want a BMW, when you've got a BMW, is the day that you've got it, you want a Porsche. Yeah. The day that you've got your Porsche, you want a Ferrari. Yeah. Like it just keeps going. Yeah. And you don't take the time to appreciate it.
Enjoy the moment. He's been a guest on the podcast, but he's a friend as well, Neil Crespin, and he spoke at one of our conferences, and he put this really simple graph on and I'll try and explain it for the listeners. But it was simply, it had 3 columns on it, and the first one's really high, and it was the desire or want for something before you have it. Yeah. And the want is so incredible and it's high. Then the middle graph is that feeling of want and desire when you actually have it, and it's minimal. And then if you lose it and you don't have it anymore, that desire and want for it is huge again. And it does make you think about, well, just appreciate the things you have, the relationships you have, the people around you.
And that's the same. So the stoic thing about whether it's about your kids dying, but the other thing is if you want a more comfortable bed, sleep on the floor for 3 nights.
Yeah.
Suddenly your bed's really comfortable. It's there's even the.
Have you tried that one?
I did actually buy a new bed, but I have massive issues with sleep. But even my daughter's got a book, a Julia Donaldson book called A Squash and a Squeeze.
Yeah.
And it's the same concept. She wants a big house. Some guy comes along, fills her house with animals, because she's like, I need more space. You fill a house with animals, take all the animals out, and suddenly you've got a really big space in your house. There's a lot of concepts like that, and yes, there are easier concepts and harder concepts to go through. But
you've clearly thought about it and made changes in your life to have that better balance. What was, if you don't mind me asking, what was your wake-up call?
I actually don't think there was. I think so. I had a very clear moment where a friend of mine runs a charity called Building Schools for Burma.
Yeah,
it's a very good charity. Everyone should look it up. He's raised about 50 grand and built about 10 schools and done amazing. It's incredible what he's managed to do with the micro charity approach.
So what was it called again?
Building Schools for Burma.
There we are.
And he asked me in 2011 when I was kind of really unfit to run a half marathon. A group was going to run a half marathon to raise some money for his charity. And Pooch and Mutt wasn't in a very good place at the time. Like, we were still, a couple $100 grand turnover a year. And I did the marathon. Now, it's the first time that I kind of, like I said earlier, I made a plan and I followed the plan and I built something and kind of had the feeling of succeeding at something that I'd put the work into. And that for me was a really big switch from what is now called, again, kind of switching from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Yeah.
To actually, there aren't better athletes, better business people, talented people. I think the word talent should be banned. That doesn't exist. There is having a plan and putting the work in. And it was like, well, I proved I can do that for a half marathon. I ended up doing it for a marathon, lots of other stuff. And it's exactly the same as kind of what I was doing at work. It was just like, put a plan, have a goal, have a plan, put the work in, and it's fine. And also having that point of knowing what the work is.
Yeah.
Because if you've got that route, you only need to do what's on that route. You don't need to do all the other shit. That's where you can start saying no.
That's just noise.
Yeah, that's
at that
all.
Point.
And it makes decision making really clear. It's like, well, we don't need to do that because that isn't on the goal.
Contextual decision making, isn't it? Every decision is made in context of, is it heading towards the goal or not?
And as I got healthier and my work-life balance, if that's what you want to call it, got healthier, the business did better.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. There was no kind of crisis point or anything, anything else. It was just like, clearly this, this growth mindset approach, whether it's in your business or your personal life or whatever, you can apply it to everything.
We talked to a team about it. It's the number one kind of attribute we want them to have.
Yeah.
It's that growth mindset. And we talk to them in their one-to-ones about it all the time.
And it's really hard. And I've written another overly opinionated piece on this because if you look at what we are exposed to growing up, if you look at, I wrote a piece last year called "Why the Queen's Gambit is Mental Poison," and if you look at from the Queen's Gambit to Harry Potter to Luke Skywalker to Karate Kid, all these things are, look at these innately talented people who can do it. I mean, if you like, I loved Karate Kid as a child, and I've done loads of martial arts. In martial arts, especially, if you've done the martial arts for 10 years, you beat the person who's done it for a year.
Yeah.
Always. You don't come along and paint a fence and suddenly you can beat someone who's done it for 10 years, who's stronger and fitter than you. It doesn't work. The person who wins is the person who puts in the work and follows the plan. But we're exposed to all of this myth that, Luke can come along and, train with Yoda for a week and suddenly he can control the Force, or Danielson can paint a fence and suddenly he can beat Johnny and all of that. And it's just not true. That is not how life works. And actually, but we're exposed to it for so long, it's so hard to fight that ingrained thought that so-and-so is more talented than us. Like, talent is a myth. And not only is talent a myth, but saying that someone is talented makes you think, well, I'm not talented, so I can't do it. Well, fuck that. You can do it. Yeah, it puts the barrier up. Get rid of that and try.
Yeah.
And there's a great thing that, you can, whether you try, you have three options. You can try something and fail, and you can try something and succeed.
Yeah.
But actually, trying something and failing and just not trying are the same thing. So you really have two. So you may as well just do stuff and see what happens.
Wow. I've really enjoyed our conversation. We do need to bring it towards an end. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things. First is, I suppose, you talk about having a 5-year plan, and that's the way in which you build kind of the future. So I'm going to ask you, where do you hope to see Pooch and Mutt in 5 years, and where do you hope to see yourself, Guy?
Well, Pooch and Mutt's an interesting one because it's something I'm working on at the moment, and for the first time, because of the investment setup we've got with our manufacturers, it's the first time I'm looking at Pooch and Mutt, the UK brand, and Pooch and Mutt kind of as a company.
Okay.
Because our manufacturer has lots of interesting brands that, I'm working on an eco brand with them, which is separate to Pooch and Mutt, but we could bring that into the Pooch and Mutt company and sell it, but not as the brand.
Yeah.
And equally, there's Pooch and Mutt as kind of European expansion. So that's kind of looking at those both separately, but we've got a very good relationship with our kind of investor manufacturer, and it's all about kind of leveraging that.
So you've got that platform now, foundations and platform to go.
And it's taken a long time to firstly get that relationship working, and secondly kind of embed how it works properly, and kind of create the foundations between us both and how we work together. But building on that is how we're going to succeed in the next 5 years.
And you personally?
Who knows at this point. There is a bit where I will be stepping back from the day-to-day operations of Pooch and Mutt. I've been offered a role on the board of the parent company, so there's that way.
Opportunity.
And I've got other plans beyond that. I'm enjoying the mentoring that I really like doing, but equally it's really hard to kind of work with people and then you don't see them for a month and then you go back and work with them. I've got a couple of ideas for a business book and one book in a totally other sector, which so there's
watch this space, listeners. I think is the answer to that one. And then the final question, and what's been great about this conversation, Guy, is we call it the Evolve to Succeed podcast, and exploring how people have changed on their journey, and you've definitely been through that journey and that change, and changing your philosophy and the Stoic kind of pieces and philosophies that you bring into your everyday life. So, but it is called the Evolve to Succeed. So final question has to be, what's your personal definition of success?
I was hoping you were going to say what's my personal definition of evolve, which would be, and I would say that's moving on from Stoicism to looking at Alan Watts, and everybody should look at Alan Watts' philosophy. My definition of success, I think it's a lot of it is to do with enabling the success of those around. If I see whether that's my team doing well or my kids doing well, or my wife doing well, she's doing really well, my kids are flourishing, the company's doing really well. It's more about that than me. Which probably is something I need to work on and be kind of more proud of myself and more about me. Absolutely. And I kind of know that, but I like to see everyone else doing well.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Guy, if people want to learn more about you and more about Pooch and Mutt, where can they go?
If they want to learn, they should follow Pooch and Mutt on all kind of social media. Go to the poochandmutt.co.uk website, buy lots of really great stuff for their dogs, and their dogs will thank them for it. If they want stupidly opinionated, nonsensical stuff, and me ranting about how stupid Brexit is, you can follow me on Twitter at Guy Blaskey, but that comes with a warning.
Brilliant. Thank you, Guy, for being such a great guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.